Hi, Serena Kashmir here. Welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about Mr. Robot. Now, I always tend to watch these super incredible, cult classic films, TV shows, like way after they're popular. So I found out, well, I didn't find out, but I actually started watching Breaking Bad years after it was over. So every time I get into something, everyone's already moved on, which kind of makes me feel like, yeah, I'm not a follower, I'm my own person. So with Mr. Robot, it was kind of like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where I watched it like 3 times before I actually started liking it. Everyone was going on about how great it was. I even went to like this Q&A Hollywood situation where all the stars were there and the writer and director was there. And, I listened to them and was interested in what they had to say about acting and stuff, but I really wasn't a part of the world at the time. So I since started watching Mr. Robot 2 or 3 times, and every time it would kind of be like, okay, like I could put it on while I'm eating or something. I was gonna sit down, I was gonna eat my dinner, and I was gonna pick something that I knew I wouldn't get hooked on. Surprise, surprise, I actually got hooked on it. So for me, the first season was kind of like, okay, whatever. But you have to get to the second season because then it gets so good. There's all of these layers and surprises. I mean, by the second season, I literally thought, what else could they do? I mean, they basically took down the whole world, like there's chaos, money doesn't exist anymore. I thought that should have been the final season. So when I got to season 2 and that happened, I thought, okay, where is this going? And then there was all these artistic choices that I really appreciated by Sam Esmail. I hope I say his name right. But he was the director of all of the episodes, I think. Every time I looked at the credits, he was the director and he also wrote it. And for a lot of TV shows, they'll have a different director every single episode. So that was kind of a unique feature of this show, that they were able to maintain that consistency and that vision. And I've heard that Sam knew exactly what he wanted to do from the first season to the end. He knew how it was going to end. And a lot of times writers will have a general sense of where they want their characters to go, but they won't know exactly what's going to happen. So that was another cool thing, that Sam was able to plot it in real time, knowing where they were going to end up by the end. I was also surprised to find out that the character Darlene, people didn't like at all, especially in the beginning. She's played by Carly Chaikin, I think is how you say her last name. But I've been a huge fan of hers because she played just the best mean girl ever in the TV show Suburgatory. That show was okay and I enjoyed it, but she was the best part. I would literally watch YouTube clips of just her being amazing. So when I saw her in this, I was on board. I didn't care what she was doing because she's just such a good actress. In Mr. Robot, you really care about these characters, especially over time with Elliot, who is falling in love with his best friend and always has been, and then you find out like why that can't work, and then you find out why he's always unhappy. And I just love when you can discover why characters are the way they are. And this TV show did an amazing job of that. Like every episode you find out something more about Elliot and why he is the way he is, and then you can totally see yourself in his shoes. Like if you were schizophrenic and if you had multiple personality disorder, these circumstances would be so terrifying. I mean, it's already scary enough to be put in life-threatening situations, but then to not know what's real and not know who you can trust on top of it is terrifying. Once him and his sister Darlene team up, their plans to infiltrate the biggest businesses, the FBI, is just genius. And even though their plans are so well thought out and slick and brilliant, the TV show does a great job of showing how any little thing could go wrong. They're in this computer room. Miraculously, they both got in. And just the way your heart beats when like the security comes in and they start realizing things going on, and then they have the whole perimeter just blocked with police. You're like, how? How? They already had the best possible plan. They got in there. They're already manipulating stuff. Now how are they going to get out? And it's just wonderful. It's only 4 seasons of this show. I got so emotionally invested in these characters. Like, first of all, if you have depression, I would not recommend this show, because I got depressed from watching this show. I would just binge it every day, and I noticed that I was getting more and more upset, and I had more of a darker view on life from this show. So keep that in mind as you're watching, because if you're empathetic in any way, it'll get to you. But the last season, you already start to discover all of the mental health issues that he's going through, how he's losing everyone that he loves, and you wonder, like, how could this person possibly function and live their lives anymore? What's the point? Then you've lost everything. What do you have to hold on to? This character that you're wondering, like, where is this going? He serves the perfect purpose because he is the dumb criminal, right? He just has so much gumption, but he really just isn't made for this life. He forces the therapist to have a meeting in front of him with Elliot. And I mean, just the writing of this scene was brilliant. I couldn't get over it. It's just unexpected, humorous, and somehow reasonable. You can see it happening in reality. You can see the pushback of Elliot and the therapist, like, this isn't gonna work, this isn't realistic. How are we supposed to get to anything deep in this controlled, chaotic environment? But they keep getting pushed, and then finally the therapist realizes what she needs to do to get the criminal off of their backs. And in order to do that, she has to crush Elliot with the thing that was lying in his subconscious this whole time. And as the scene goes on, the answer of what that thing is does become clear. And yet, when he realizes it, it's just the most heartbreaking thing ever. I mean, usually when you're watching something, you want to discover something at the same time as the character, or for the most part, it kind of takes away the effect of surprise and excitement, So if you discover it with the character, you guys are more bonded. But in this instance, I found out what it was. And as I figured it out, I was kind of like, okay, I mean, of course, like, yes, this is really dark and hard. So I wasn't quite sure how much it was going to affect me. I was just like, okay, what is this going to do to the story? But when Elliot realized it in his reactions and how it affected everything going forward, and it changed who he was, oh my God, I was just crying and crying and crying. Like, as the seasons go on, I went from not caring at all to crying every single episode and having just so much empathy for these characters, and realizing that all of them feel alone and none of them have anybody to rely on, and there's no clear mirror in their lives to reality. They're all confused, they all don't know which way is up, and they all just want a way out of pain. So when we get to this final point with Elliot, oh my God, it crushed me. So be prepared for that. Okay, so now we know why Elliot developed these mental health issues and how they went unresolved and how he got to the point that he was at. Then the show took the weirdest turn, and I really thought, okay, you lost me. Like, this was such a good show and you lost me. They took us out of reality, and I thought, okay, you can't just do that your last season. You can't just be in reality the whole time and then be like, oh, like, that reminds me of Lost. If you've seen Lost, they all go to heaven or something, and it just lost me. It lost everybody. We're like, is this reality? Are they dead? Are they dreaming? We just didn't know. We all had to Google it afterwards to figure it out. So I had a moment like that with this, where I just thought, so you don't know what else to write, and this is where we're going? But then it ties back. He comes back to reality, and just, oh my God. So then you realize that nothing is what it seems at all. Like, I'm not gonna spoil it, but he is more than who he thinks. Whew! And then they end the series with him and his sister having a final bonding moment. And again, Carly just completely killed this moment as Darlene. I wondered if she was gonna really like feed into it and overdo it, but she kind of underdid it and it meant even more. And then to find out that she knew his secret all along, I felt just solidified them to each other as the one person they had in each other's life, that no matter what chaos goes on, they know each other better than anybody at the end of the day. I also want to shout out BD Wong. He played White Rose, which is the biggest villain in the show. He played a transgender woman and he did not overdo it at all. It was completely seamless. It was completely believable. The whole world accepted that this was just who she was, and it wasn't about the fact that she was transgender. It was just part of the character. And it made it more interesting because when she's not White Rose, she leads life as a man, but then when she's White Rose, she leads life as a woman. And so I just love that that was so seamless, and it represented another side of humanity that we don't get to see very often in film. And then BD Wong as the actor, like, he didn't overdo the voice. His voice was sure a little bit higher and a little bit more whisper in the voice, but it was not overdone at all. And he did so many gestures, like he was very like this with his hands a lot, just very delicate, but again, not overdone. Wonderful. There were quite a few times in this show where I thought, oh, there's an error, or oh, there's a hole in the story. And I saw little things that took me out of it. And because I love the show so much, I was kind of like, well, I guess you can't have all of them. But Sam Esmail is so brilliant. So Elliot's best friend, his childhood best friend. So she's talking to her boss, and then he reveals something to her that's life-changing. And he then tells her that she needs to give up her fight against White Rose and just let it go. She says that she won't do that. And he says, I wish you wouldn't have said that. Now, here's a little spoiler, so skip this part if you don't want to hear it. She gets up and, like, say she's talking to her boss here. She gets up and she goes like this, and she just kind of like stares for a really long time. And so I was like, oh, what did she just see? But then she comes back and she starts talking to him again. So that was one of those moments where I was like, what was that about? But by the end of the scene, he goes off, and her last words are, you might want to leave for this or something. And I was like, what? Again, another flaw in the storyline. So he goes off, and like everything is so subtle, it's so great. So he goes off, and now he's not a very expressive person. You don't really know a lot about him. He gets up and he walks away, but he kind of does like this sidewalk, like if I'm walking away from you, like he's walking away from her. He doesn't just like turn and go. He kind of like goes a little bit like that. Like it's even more subtle, but he's sort of not making a decision. So again, I thought, well, that's kind of a weird walk, but whatever, this is a weird dude. The director should have caught that or been like, what is that? Or if it is something, tell him to amp it up so that we know it's something. But as he finally decides that he is walking away and he's gonna walk like a normal human being, these two guys with guns pass him and come into frame. So we didn't see them before. And then they go over and they shoot the girl. So then I was like, that's why she looked away. That's why she said you might want to leave for this. And then that's why he like walked sideways away from her. But I'm telling you, all three of those moments were so subtle. So subtle. So, you know, every time I would start to criticize Sam's writing or directing, he always proved me wrong, that he knew better than I did, and his art is effortless. So all in all, Mr. Robot is incredible. Watch it, get through the first season, find all of these nuances, connect to these characters. If you need a good cry, you're gonna get tons of those opportunities. And the cast, the writing, the directing, the cinematography is incredible. And anyway, thanks for watching another Media Mondays, and I'll see you next time.